Episode 8, Chapter 7, The Prophet Looked at Me. Chapter 7, The Prophet Looked and He Laughed at Me. From 3 of the 4 corners of the Temple of Fiends, 3 beings emerged slowly, creeping through the darkness. Empty even of the undead now, it held nothing to attract their notice as they crept through the halls. At the exact same moment, all 3 arrived in the central chamber, where they silently regarded each other for some time before one of them spoke.
Well, brethren, do you still think they are not to be taken seriously?
Tiamat, fiend of air, inquired scathingly.
Or perhaps we should ask Lich his opinion on the matter now. All right, don't belabor it, Tiamat.
Kraken, fiend of water, muttered sullenly.
You were right, we were wrong, we get it. What I don't understand is how it happened. Despite that stupid prophecy, they were still mortals. How could any such as they slay Lich? It's not as though we're invincible as that, Kraken.
Carrie, fiend of fire, sighed, occasional flames shining through the darkness surrounding her.
We've passed before. Reverted back to our opposites when we grow weak. All they did was accelerate that. Much in the same way mine and Lich's latest turnings were accelerated by yours and Tiamat's control. I think we've found the source of that prophecy. What?
Kraken gasped, recoiling.
You mean our opposites? Impossible. They don't exist right now. It's them or us. When we're here, they have no power at all. Don't be so simple-minded, Kraken.
Carrie sneered.
Remember how Lich was imprisoned through the last actions of his opposite before the last turning? That one's power remained even after his downfall. They could very well have put this into play during the last time all 4 of them were together, before Tiamat turned, and it's only hitting us now. You may very well have hit on it, sister mine.
Tiamat agreed.
Congratulations! You've found your brain again. I was beginning to forget how intelligent you truly were when you bothered to try. I was sleepy before.
Carrie shrugged, not offended by the insult.
Lich's death certainly woke me up, though. I have no intention of letting them follow suit with me. I wouldn't get to play with that one who dreams of me if they did. And I've put too much time into him to allow that to happen. Of course, that's the only reason anybody would ever want to avoid getting killed.
Kraken rolled his eyes, and Carrie scowled.
I haven't seen you use your brain lately, Kraken. Why don't you either contribute something worth listening to, or shut up? Gladly.
Kraken replied dryly.
Consider, then. We still don't know the point of the prophecy and all this mess. As long as we figured on it being only the mortals, we could assume that they just want us gone as soon as possible, not realizing that we would return in time, just like before. If our opposites are responsible, though, they're smarter than that. And that leaves the question of just what they're trying to accomplish. What their purpose is in doing all of this. You think there's more to this than it seems?
Carrie demanded.
More than just trying to kill us. I do.
Kraken confirmed.
What do you say, Tiamat?
The fiend of air slowly nodded, pleased that both her remaining brethren were back up to their full capacities now.
It may very well be so. It's too early to say for sure, but it could definitely be something like that. All the more reason to prepare for the worst. In case all of our efforts come to naught, and we end up falling like Lich did. As it so happens, I was already preparing for this, even before this happened. Yes, we know.
Kraken rolled his eyes.
You saw them as a true threat, we didn't, we know. It was not only I. Lich agreed with me about the potential threat of the Light Warriors.
Tiamat informed them smugly.
That turned out to be quite fortunate, since what I've got planned requires all four of us to contribute. Since he agreed with me on it, as soon as his full power was released, he immediately channeled the necessary portion of it. With any luck, his opposite will be too groggy to notice it until it's too late, as will ours if we follow his fate. You've managed to arouse my curiosity, Tiamat,
the Fiend of Fire admitted, raising an eyebrow.
I thought I noticed something on my way here, but I couldn't be sure. Let me see.
She blinked.
Oh ho! So, it's that.
She turned to regard the black orb, which sat motionless as always, showing no signs of noticing their presence. Tiamat nodded.
Exactly. If we all allocate equal portions of our power to it now, then there will be a contingency even if the prophecy becomes true and we are all slain by those four. It never hurts to be careful, after.
She broke off and stared at the entrance to the room.
What they? Oh, I'm sorry. Was this a private party?
The element of earth, covered in a thin white fog, walked into the room.
And here I thought anybody could attend. Oh well, a crasher I am. At least I dressed appropriately. You're pushing your luck, fool.
Kraken hissed angrily.
Do you really want to try your power against all three of us? Please.
Earth yawned theatrically.
This far from our centers of power, none of us could really do much to each other. It'd just be showing off. You can't keep me out of here. Your own domiciles, surely, but not this place. It belongs to all of us equally, no matter which side of the turnover we're currently on. Don't think you can order me around just because the numbers are currently in your favor, fiend. I have reason to believe that may be changing soon. Aren't we the bold one?
Kari's eyes flashed.
How interesting. Even if it's just showing off, it might be amusing to do so for some time. Keep on pushing it and it could happen quite easily, Element. I'd enjoy it. Enough, Kari.
Tiamat drew herself up rather stiffly and glared at Earth.
If you'll insist on hanging around, we may as well take our leave. We're certainly not going to discuss our affairs with you around to hear and report back to those mortals you've leashed yourself to. At least a dog can count on not having to scrounge for roadkill.
Earth returned.
If you're leaving, then, this place has seen better days. I think I'll tidy it up a bit.
Producing a feather duster out of nowhere, he began waving it around the walls, humming. After staring for a few moments, the three remaining fiends left, muttering to themselves irritably. The seas were as riotous as ever, waves throwing the amphitrite around like a toy boat as it sat anchored off the southern coast of Elfland, on its way to Crescent Lake. As uncaring as ever, the crew of the pirate vessel were slumbering under the full moon, with only a drowsy watchman remaining technically awake in case of attack from Sahaghin or worse. Him, and one other, who sat on the rail of the ship, feet dangling into the salty spray.
Damn it all! It doesn't help.
Vlad muttered, still remembering the painful clarity of the nightmare that had roused him on this evening, identical to all the rest. He knew that even if he were to go so far as to hurl himself bodily into the icy waters below, he would still feel the horrible sensation of the flames consuming his body, searing into him with a pain that promised to never go out, to never end. Sighing, he removed his hat and looked out over the ocean's expanse.
What was I thinking? If casting ice on myself wouldn't stop the feeling, this certainly wouldn't help. I still say that's number one on your list of boneheaded moves, brother.
A voice behind him caused him to look over to Mary, sitting up from where she had been sleeping and smiling with just a hint of amusement.
As I'm sure you remember Merton explaining to you at some length after he thought you And it was your own fault if that just made it worse. You were the one who did that to yourself. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Vlad grumbled, now irritated at himself for waking his sister.
Fortunately, things haven't gotten quite that bad on this journey until now, although that one shortly after we first met Bicky that alerted the other two to my condition certainly came close. Until now.
The white mage spotted, sounding worried.
Tonight was that bad, then? Yes.
Vlad admitted.
I thought I had succeeded in keeping my noise level down regardless this time, but it seems I inadvertently awakened you nonetheless. My apologies. Don't apologize.
Mary stood and walked over to sit on the rail next to him.
It wasn't that. I woke up all by myself, only a few minutes ago. It's not your fault, so don't act like it is. Really? Well, I suppose that's one time, at least.
He started to put his hat back on, but his sister's hand stopped him.
Don't do that, either.
She told him firmly.
I already know what your face looks like. I won't forget it no matter how long you wear that thing. I don't suppose the others will either, now that they've seen me without it.
Vlad glanced back at the sleeping Drake and Luke, face even more withered than it had been after Lich's assault. Mary frowned.
Stop that. Neither of them care about that sort of thing, and you know it. Perhaps.
Vlad admitted.
I suppose Drake wouldn't judge me on that, even if he did on other things. And Luke's not bright enough to do anything at all like the sort.
Mary's smile reappeared.
There you go. If you're going to insist on insulting them, at least insult them accurately.
She giggled slightly, then sobered.
So it was another really bad one tonight, then? Yes. There was lava involved. It's been a while since that happened.
Vlad scowled.
If I thought I could, I'd revive Lich and kill him again just for putting that into my head. That was dirty.
Mary agreed.
And it's only going to get worse, soon. Much worse.
The black mage looked out to the east, and his sister slowly nodded.
That's right. We're going to Crescent Lake. The domain of the Fiend of Fire. Carrie. And we've confirmed that we can kill the fiends. Which means there won't be any reason not to go after her. We'll have to do it. And we'll have to go into her domain. Into the Gurgu volcano. Where the lava will be the least of my worries.
Vlad began to shake.
It'll be okay.
The white mage tried to assure him.
We've come though everything so far. We'll make it through this as well.
Her brother turned to look at her fearfully, all of his defenses and cynicism completely gone, revealing stark terror.
Mary. What if I can't do it? What? What do you mean?
She pleaded ignorance, hoping he would forget it, but it would not be dissuaded so easily.
What if I try as hard as I can to go forward, to go in with you to that place? But I can't. If what's happened to me just makes me freeze up, unable to move forward, no matter how hard I try. That won't happen.
Mary shook her head.
You're stronger than that. You can overcome this. Remember how long it took me to learn even the most rudimentary fire spell.
Vlad continued rambling.
I picked up lightning and sleep easily, but fire took me forever. No matter what Merton told me, I was too afraid of the flames to direct my own will into summoning them. I only did it in the end by focusing on creating them away from me, by pushing them out. But you did it.
Mary seized on that.
You came up against that barrier, yes, but you overcame it in the end. You beat it. You can beat this, Vlad. I know you can. When you truly give them your all, you can summon forth emotions stronger than your fear. You did it before, and you can do it again. Do you really think so?
The black mage whispered, voice as quiet and light as it had been when he had been years younger.
Do you really think I can do that? I know you can.
Mary fought down her impulse to hug him, knowing that her brother disliked human touch and that in his current state, even the slight increase of another body's heat might drive him further into panic. Instead, she simply held his hand and sat down on the rail next to him.
Remember how many times we grew sick of our training? Threw up our hands and said we'd never be able to learn magic, never become the light warriors? But here we are now. Months on the journey, good friends with the other two, one fiend under our belt, and sailing with the most.
She groped for a word.
Unique crew in the world. That's an accurate way of describing Vicky, I suppose.
Vlad chuckled a little, relaxing slightly. Mary smiled and went for a joke, hoping to ride his show of humor further.
I wonder if we could figure out some way to fireproof this ship and launch it into the volcano. I imagine even Carrie would be taken off guard if this thing came barging in with Vicky on the prow laughing and screaming threats. I knew you had been associating with Drake for too long.
Her brother smiled to show her he wasn't serious.
At least your sense of humor hasn't become quite as warped as his.
He paused.
Do you really like him that much? Yes, I think I do.
Mary admitted.
He's funny and cute and smart, and he's a lot stronger and smarter than he gives himself credit for. He's not even remotely stuck up, and he's open and honest with us. And he likes me back, too. Sorry, bro. Looks like you're stuck with it.
She smirked.
It had to happen eventually. I assume sooner or later I'll have to learn to get along with whoever you end up with, too. I wonder what kind of girl you would like. I suppose I should have expected this.
Vlad grumbled good-naturedly, the worst of his experience over. Smiling, Mary continued to tease him gently until dawn rose and the ship resumed its travels.
Right, this is as close as we're getting to Crescent Lake,
Vicky announced as the Amphitrite neared a peninsula jutting out of the land to their west. They had sailed all the way past the southern border of Elfland, and around the south and east sides of the kingdom named for its most significant geographical feature.
The harbor here's like the one in Elfland. A couple days walk away from the actual lake and the capital. There's a huge old river system running through the mountains in most of this kingdom, but I ain't taken this old sea cow through those. She'd never make it. This'll just have to do.
Luke nodded as they approached the harbor.
No problem. We haven't forgotten how to walk. Didn't figure you had, matey.
Vicky grinned, then changed it to a scowl when he saw the harbor. Quite a few men in official-looking uniforms were standing around, watching their approach.
Arg, should have figured it'd happen sooner or later. Me reputation's hauntin' me today. Those fellas know who I am, and they ain't plannin' on lettin' me dock. We'll have to persuade 'em otherwise, the hard way. Grab your weapons, mateys, we got a fight on our hands. Hold it, hold it.
Drake waved his hands.
Let me at least try the nice way first, okay?
Without waiting for a response, he dashed to the prow.
Hey, fellas. What's going on here? You would be Drake of the Light Warriors.
The apparent captain yelled back.
The Circle of Sages have sent us to escort you to Crescent Lake. Aha! See, it's a good thing.
Drake winked at Vicky, who slowly nodded.
All right, all right.
the pirate captain grumbled, steering his ship into the harbor.
I guess it's all well and good. Hey, Sarge, we won't be no trouble. Bicky the pirate. We know about your, change of careers.
The captain nodded diplomatically.
The circle has made us vow not to attack your men as long as we're extended the same courtesy. Sounds good. Right, usual deal fellas, we'll be here when ye get back.
Bicky shrugged.
Fishin's good around this place, and the water monsters are tougher than most, so the crew won't even get too bored. Have fun stormin' the volcano. That man has a warped sense of humor,
Vlad noted as they left the harbor.
Fun, though.
Drake shrugged, looking around. Despite its proximity to a fiend, Crescent Lake was in nowhere near the state of decay as Melmond had been. It was pleasant and warm, with lush grass and strange, tropical-looking trees. The guard, clearly experienced, showed them the best ways to deal with the native trolls and giants as they zeroed in on the country's namesake, the huge, moon-shaped body of water that lay at its heart.
It's the largest freshwater body in the world, aside from some inaccessible deposits high in the Onrak Mountains.
Mary explained as the four light warriors looked across its surface for the first time.
Before the fiends came, I'm told it was a wondrous place. We still kinda like it, Missy, even if it's crawling with monsters now.
The captain led them to a metal shack on the east side of the lake.
Now, we could just walk all the way around it, but that'd take us another day. Instead, we tend to use these.
Entering the shack, the soldiers hauled out what appeared to be several miniature boats, long and narrow with only enough room to fit 4 people.
These are canoes. It wouldn't be a good idea to take them out into the sea, but for rivers and lakes they're the best way to navigate. Looks like they'd be a bit tricky to work, though.
Luke noted.
It's not so bad. We've got 4, so one of you can ride in each and we'll show you how it's done.
The captain grinned.
Why does this feel like a setup?
Drake muttered as they clambered into the canoes and set off. Rowing the tiny boats with the elongated paddles that the soldiers called oars was an interesting experience at first, but to everybody's relief, and Drake's amusement, the only one who was accidentally struck in the head was Luke, who shrugged it off rather easily before returning to his own practice. By the time they reached the city on the lake's west side, the 4 light warriors were hardly experts, but they were competent.
You wouldn't sink if you were by yourselves, and that's the important thing.
The captain pronounced as they clambered out of the canoes at their destination. Drake nodded, wiping water off of his face.
Oh well, it was kind of nice to cool down anyways. Is it normally this warm around here?
The captain frowned.
Not exactly. That's part of what the sages need to talk with you about. Shall we go?
Turning, he led the way into town.
Touched a nerve there, didn't I?
The elf muttered.
I'm getting that feeling of impending doom again. You just had to say something, didn't you?
Vlad grumbled.
It's a bad habit of mine,
Drake admitted as they entered the city. Like most capitals, it was surrounded by a high defensive wall, but thin streams of water ran freely under it in many places. The reason became clear once they were inside. Those same streams continued on through the city, alongside and underneath the streets. Fish and waterfowl swam around openly, but no monsters lurked.
Nice place,
Vlad grunted after a moment.
Yeah.
Luke critically eyed a huge gap in the wall, to the northeast.
Is that really a good idea, though? Shouldn't it be repaired? It's deliberate,
the captain explained.
It leads into a forested clearing where a few certain people reside. People who we all trust to defend that spot, if the need arises. No monster in their right mind would try to sneak in through there. The circle of sages.
Mary realized.
Do they want to see us right away, or can we rest a little first? Well, after your journey from Melmond, they figured you might want a little of that.
The captain smiled.
You've got rooms at that inn right there. Feel free to unwind. I'm sure they'll understand.
The light warriors promptly took his advice, but even after bathing and going to their rooms, none of them were able to truly relax. The heat that they had noticed on the trip over continued to hang over them like a haze, harsh and cloying. Finally, they gave up.
When we get done with this meeting, I may just hurl myself into the water,
Drake muttered as they moved towards the gap in the wall. Vlad grunted noncommittally. The normally taciturn black mage had become even more silent since the onset of the heat, and had barely spoken a single word since their arrival. Mary looked worried, but didn't broach the subject as they left the city proper and continued along a forest path. Then, as they turned a bend, 3 elderly figures in robes and conical hats became visible, 2 male, 1 female.
Well, well. Look who finally showed up.
One of the old men strode forward and knuckled Luke on the head.
You've been making these 3 do all your thinking for you, haven't you? If Drake was doing the thinking, they never would have made it this far.
The woman, an ancient elf, chuckled.
You still picking pockets, kid? Hey, you should just be glad you only had to deal with 1 each.
The other man snorted, looking over the mages.
I had both of these clowns. Tell me you've been keeping up with your studies. All right, that's enough, Lucan.
Luke rolled away from the sage.
And you would be Valish and Merton, I assume? The sages from Elfland and Gaia? Nice to meet you. No, I'm not still picking pockets, Granny.
Drake answered, shaking his head.
And yes, I'm still keeping up with my studies.
Mary glanced at Drake, who winked.
I suppose we could try swapping out for a few days. You pick pockets, I look at those magic books.
Drake suggested.
It might be interesting.
Mary nodded.
They're joking.
Vlad explained to the 2 sages, who were beginning to wince.
Sorry, Merton. My sister's developed an unwholesome liking for this rogue. I should have figured.
Valish slapped her face.
Oh well, nothing to do for it now, I guess. All right, enough fooling around.
Lucan shook his head.
Let's go. The rest of them are waiting for us.
Together, the 3 sages and 4 light warriors continued on into a huge clearing, where the other sages awaited. 12 elders from every culture around the world, Pravoka and Melmond, Onrak and Crescent Lake and the wildlands of Drakir. There was a dwarf, and even a dragon, as well as 2 other women in garb none of them recognized. The 3 others joined them, and all 12 turned to regard the light warriors.
I, Lucan, Sage of Corneria, call this meeting of the Council of Sages to order.
Lucan intoned formally.
Now, all legends and prophecies will be fulfilled. Our path has been decided.
Lucan stated stiffly, as if in ritual.
The light warriors have come to us at last, to seek guidance on their paths. Let us provide it. They look a bit scrubby to me.
A wild old man in furs, doubtless from Drakir, scoffed.
You're sure these are the ones? They killed Lich, didn't they?
The dwarven sage shot back.
Doubt any of us could pull that. I'd say that says it all.
He winked at the light warriors.
Forgive me, temperamental old friend, fellas. Gakath is always trying to start something. I'm Auric, by the way. It happens.
Drake shrugged.
It's not so much necessary to look tough as it is to actually get the job done, so as long as we can manage that.
Gaketh bared his teeth approvingly.
Well said, elf boy. You're more than you look. All right, enough quibbling.
The dragon, 10 feet tall with iron-gray scales, looked down at them.
You have come to receive knowledge from us. We should provide it, then. If it's not too much bother.
Luke agreed.
You do seem to be the authority on it, what with the prophecy and all. Indeed. We, the 12 sages, were led here by the stars and the prophecy.
Valish intoned, then smirked.
And it's probably for a reason, so let's earn our pay, huh? We don't get paid, Valish.
Another old woman, wearing a blue dress with a fish pattern, remarked with a pained expression.
We don't? Well then, who do we ask for a raise?
Auric growled, mock indignant.
As a matter of fact, I think Drake here might have the answer to that in his pack.
Sarda winked at them all.
Drake, why don't you show these quarreling old coots?
The young elf grinned back.
If you insist, O mighty sage of Melmond.
He drew out the glowing orb of earth, and all conversation among the sages broke off, staring at it.
That's really it?
The dragon whispered.
I doubted. Even after what we all felt, I doubted. But there's no arguing with this. The orb of earth shines once more. And there is hope for the others. Indeed there is, Macgarrison. Earth, air, fire, and water. The world is bound by those 4 powers.
Murden followed up.
These powers, in the form of the elements, created the world, and only their return can stop its destruction. Once, the orbs shined with the powers of earth, fire, air, and water.
A tan-skinned elder wearing the garb of Onrak continued.
The 4 fiends control those powers now.
He gave them a direct look.
How much do you know about that? Not too much, in my case.
Luke admitted.
I mean, I know that the fiends and the elements are opposites and all that, but that's about it. Then perhaps we should start there.
A female sage whose culture none of them recognized spoke, slow and halting.
The elements were the kindly forces that created this world. But every few centuries, for reasons unknown, they become evil and transform into the fiends, who seek to undo everything their opposites strived for. In time, they return to the elements, and the cycle continues.
She paused for a moment.
400 years ago, air was lost to Tiamat. 200 years later, water followed suit, turning to Kraken. Then earth and fire followed, becoming Lich and Carry. The powers that bind this world were gone.
She glanced at the woman in the fish-patterned dress, who continued.
Whenever they rise, these 4 fiends are bent on the world's destruction. Evidence of this was seen when Kraken last rose 200 years ago. The fiend of air teamed up with that of water to destroy civilizations near them.
She lowered her head.
The Lefinish, the Dragonkin, and my kind suffered greatly in those times. Although the Dragonkin survive on the Isles of Cardia, their original home is no longer theirs. The majority of my people remain isolated, cut off from the rest of the world. And the only traces of Lefinish culture remain in the furthest reaches of the land that was once theirs, out of Tiamat's grasp. Then,
Mary slowly realized.
You're one of the merfolk, aren't you, madam?
The sage she addressed nodded.
Indeed. My name is Darius.
She indicated the woman who had spoken before her.
And my friend Lashy here is from Lefane. That covers ancient history. Now to the present day.
Sarda pressed on.
Ever since their last rising, the four fiends have striven to continue their work to destroy this world. Fortunately, they were constrained in some ways. Lich, by the plate that imprisoned him in his own power. And yet, the fiend of earth caused the rot of the land.
The Melmondian sage nodded to another, who wore the same sort of garb many of the citizens of Crescent Lake did.
And with him gone, another is throwing off that which had limited her. Isn't that right, Calabac? Indeed.
The sage of Crescent Lake nodded grimly.
Before now, Carrie was not as much a direct threat to the lands around her as the others. Due to her laziness, she spent most of her time in slumber. Lich's death seems to have roused her, though. Ever since, we have felt her malignant power increase, taking form. She is awake, and she threatens us all. The heat?
Drake snapped his fingers.
She's doing this, isn't she? Driving the temperature up. Exactly.
Calabac confirmed.
She has realized your threat, and now the Fiend of Fire intends to lay waste to this country. To burn everything. Oh, this is so not good.
Luke groaned.
Monsters are one thing. But if we get grass fires starting all over the place here, we're toast. No joke intended. Then we've got no choice.
Vlad spoke for the first time during the meeting, voice strained.
We have to stop that. We have to move, and move fast. And destroy Carrie before she can do this. There's no time to lose. She has to die, and she has to die now. Indeed. That was our conclusion as well.
Lucan admitted.
We had wished to allow you more time here first, but it seems that option is no longer available to us. Or to you. You can manage it, though.
The wild Mangakath assured them.
You've done this before. It's the same deal as Lich. Each element's power focuses at the altar, in the heart of that element on this world. Go there, and crush the fiend who defiles it. Then place the orb on the altar, and the element will wake back up. All right then.
Luke decided.
We'll spend today grabbing gear and magic from town, then head out tomorrow. Hey, wait a second.
He blinked.
Where the heck is Gurgu Volcano anyways? It's up in the mountains, through the river system.
Calabac explained.
The rivers are the only way to reach it. Well,
Drake frowned.
We don't exactly have a way to travel those. Unless you expect us to swim, and from what I've heard of the river monsters around here, that would be a bad idea to say the least. What, did ya think we had you learn how to work a canoe just for kicks?
Oric grinned.
We're giving ya one for yourselves, and we'll even let ya take it back to that maniac Bicky once you're done. The guard'll give ya the best canoe in town tomorrow, and a map of the river system. That's all ya need to get to the volcano. Once you're there, it's up to you to bring down that fiend. It's up to you. We're all counting on you, light warriors.
Macgarrison stated.
Quickly, before all is destroyed, hurry to Gurgu Volcano and stop the Fiend of Fire. The world depends on it. That sums it up rather neatly, doesn't it?
Mary sighed, then smiled.
We'll do our best. I guess that's our job. Hopefully we'll return to you again. We'll all pray for it.
The last of the sages, a woman in provoking garb, promised.
Even now, we have not completely understood the prophecy. As your journey continues, we shall attempt to comprehend its remaining secrets. When you return, perhaps we will be able to tell you more. Oh, that's nice, Callan. Just go right ahead and tell them we're incompetent, why don't you?
The Onration sage muttered.
No, I'll pass, thanks. but you can say it if you want to, Arisham.
Callan retorted.
We'll be heading back to town, then.
Luke sighed.
We'd better hit the shops, then, and do our best to rest up. Looks like we've got no time to lose. Good luck, all of you.
Turning, the light warriors began walking away as the elders continued to bicker amongst themselves.
Well, that was to the point.
Drake muttered.
I suppose there is a need for haste and all, but still. You would think they could have told us more about the prophecy and all that, or something. Look at it this way. You saw that thing back in Sardas. Did you really want to try and wring comprehensibility out of it?
Mary reminded him.
I'm just glad they're doing that for us. You make a good point.
The elf nodded.
Let's rest up, then, and tomorrow, as Bicky said, we storm the volcano. Nice to see you being so cheery about it.
Vlad noted sardonically.
I'm not looking forward to it, personally. Burning and fire and all that. But that's just me, what do I know?
He waved his sister off before she even spoke.
Sarcasm, sister. It's our job, we have to do it. I'll be fine. Let's get ready for it, then.
Back inside the town, he immediately headed for the magic shops, not noticing or caring about the worried eyes of the others on his back. Vlad screamed. Vlad burned. Vlad ran. Searing his skin, boiling his blood, the flames covered every inch of him, continually feeding off of him but never consuming him entirely, continuing to blaze through him continuously, eternally, always. And burning Carrie watched, and laughed. Vlad ran, but there was nowhere to run to. He hid, but that which he hid from had already found him. The world was silent and still around him, unmoving, uncomprehending of his suffering, of his existence. He saw everything, but nothing saw him. Nothing would ever acknowledge his existence again. Nothing but the flames that would always be there. And searing Carrie looked, and exulted. Vlad ran, a screaming, searing, ever-burning wreckage of a man, flames coursing through him wherever he went. He ran across the world, seeking something, anything, that would douse the flames, but none could do so. The waters of the lakes, of the rivers, even of the sea itself, simply boiled into steam around him. The ice in the north, at the peak of the world, held no trace of cold for him, it melted and boiled as well. Neither did the ice of the south, and though Vlad ran from one pole of the world to the other in his frenzy, clutching to the desperate hope that one would succeed where the other did not, it availed him not. And flaming Carrie saw, and smiled. No matter where he ran, the fires would not let him rest. They spurred him onwards, forced him into frenzied movement, seeking, searching for relief that would never come. Finally, he returned to where he had begun the volcano, the heart of fire. The lava scalded him, but not so much as the eternal flames that were part of him forever, and he passed through to the core of the volcano, where she waited, she who had doomed him, she who waited for the day when he would burn for real, forever and always. Carrie, fiend of fire, waited for him.
Burn, little Vlad! Burn, warrior of light!
Blazing Carrie hissed.
Scream in pain, writhe in agony, as you burn for me. You are mine, Vlad, and you will burn forever once you come to me. That is your fate, your purpose, the reason you were born. To burn for me. For I am fire, Vlad, and fire must have something to consume. I will use you, Vlad, for my fires that will never end. The spirit that fills you will be food for my flames. You will be mine, Vlad, and my flames will devour you, and you shall burn always and forever.
And in absolute despair, confronted with the horror of eternal flame, Vlad awoke from the nightmare. And Vlad screamed. And in the horrible, clinging heat that had risen over Crescent Lake, that filled his room in the inn, though there was no physical flame, though the fires were not literally there, Vlad felt himself burn. But Vlad could not run. End of chapter.